there and welcome to Gaining Vision. I'm Melanie. Have you had an opportunity to subscribe to the channel yet? If not, take a second, hit subscribe, and please don't forget to like and share. Have you heard the term active listening? We all know what listening is when you listen to certain things. Maybe it's the sounds of nature outside, or to music you like, or to your parent nagging you, or perhaps your kids screaming. We all hear it. We all listen to that. But active listening is the act of actually paying attention to what somebody is saying. And active listening is really, really important because we can get a lot out of what we're hearing. Not just on the content of what they're saying, but you can hear a lot more than actually is being said. So if somebody is telling you something that happened to them on the weekend, it was an ordeal for them, something that happened to their family. They may be telling you the story about little Joy having to be rushed to the hospital because of falling off their bike. But what they're also probably telling you, if you listen closely, is that they're struggling with something else. Or perhaps it's that they're not going to be able to come and meet you for whatever without directly coming out and saying those words. If you use active listening in that situation, you probably would be a much better friend. You'll know what the next question or to say or to avoid might be as a trigger. Also, active listening is important when you're in an interview situation. If somebody's asking you a specific question in an interview, you may find that you're answering it, but you're not answering it because you didn't listen carefully to what was being asked. You may start off on one track and then you veer, and you have to be able to catch yourself and move back to the original question. Active listening is also very important in a conversation when it's going back and forth, especially if it's in a group of people. You want to hear what each person is saying so that you can contribute to the conversation in an educated and coherent way. You want to sound like you know what you're hearing, you're doing. Also, if you're interviewing somebody for a radio station or perhaps a TV show, it's really important for the broadcaster to have active listening skills. So if you pose a question that's vague and they answer your next question in that answer, you don't want to come back and ask that same question next. I've heard this so many times in interviews. It might start off by, so tell me about yourself, and they'll tell you about their professional background, their education, and their career. And if your next question on the list of questions to ask is, so what is your role at work? And they've already answered it in the first answer, you look like you're not listening when you're asking that second question. So you have to be thinking on your feet, actively listening to what's being said, and pivot and be prepared with a follow-up question. Perhaps it's not one that's on your list to ask, but that's okay. Be impromptu. Active listening also helps when you're dealing with children. Again, they may not be able to articulate how they're feeling or what they're actually telling you has happened at school. They're not going to want to tell you when they're struggling or having challenges at school, whether it's being bullied or a teacher picking on them or not helping them out. This is when parents really need to listen actively. Know your child. If they're using certain words or actions or emotions that you know are signs of struggle or fear or hurt, ask some additional probing questions to get them to talk about what they're actually trying to say. Active listening is a skill that is learnt and practiced. It's not something we all have natural. Because naturally, as I mentioned, we hear things all the time. The nature, the music, the kids yelling and screaming, our parents nagging us, whatever that is, we are hearing that. But active listening takes practice and learning how to do it. A good way to practice your active listening skills is to multitask. So maybe have music on in the background that you like as popular, or the TV in the background, and try and focus on what you're doing. If you're focusing on what you're doing and you hear something in that song or on the news that catches your attention, that diverts you from what you're doing, you're actively listening. It's not necessarily the best skill to do. Obviously, multitasking isn't always ideal, but active listening is a skill you definitely want to evolve and develop. I love active listening when dealing with my students, as well as when dealing with my family and friends and my husband. It's hard sometimes because I may ask the question more than once, but it's so that I understand what the situation is presenting me. And even if you ask the same question twice, it may be answered differently depending on what that person wants to come across. Reading between the lines is part of active listening as well. Sometimes just as important to listen to what's being said than it is when what's not being said. Do you practice active listening, or are you just one of those surface listeners? We always joke around when we say our spouse has subjective listening or selective hearing, that sort of thing, because they only hear what they want to hear. That's true, but maybe there's a reason why they don't want to hear what's being said. It could be that they've heard it over and over again, and perhaps you're not presenting your argument in a certain way, or perhaps it's something that triggers them. So we have to be mindful and find out the people in our lives, what works best for them. Active listening will help us in work situations, family life, with our friends, and in the real world. Let's all strive to be active listeners. Until next time, practice your listening skills, both normal and active listening. And please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like and share, and we'll catch you next time.